column. Today, I want to talk about the refugees who arrived in Japan at the beginning of the 20th century, the beginning of the history of diplomatic relations between the two countries, their reception by the Japanese government and the important role of Agur in that matter. I also want to present some closed episodes about the refugees during their time in Japan. My speech is mainly based on Japanese archival documents and the refugees, monographs, letters and their family archives. Of course, I will not talk about the content of the materials about Diana Agur's biography, because she has been talked about a lot, although I recently found a lot of interesting material about the disaster family. Their top. Yes, it is certain what happened to the Solon brothers, their names have been found out, but why is it Armenian? I will not talk about it today. If there are any biographical questions, please, I will be happy to answer them. Before the Armenian Genocide began to live and create Diana oil for many years for Yoko Japan, sometimes also collecting pennies starting from the end of 1890. To prevent genocide. But the fateful year 915 came and months later, a part of the Armenian people appeared right in front of his door. In front of Yan, he will have to fight not with a pen, but physically, in order to save them and send them away successfully. Men, of course. I must mention that his pen was never put down, and from this letter, Diana Agur imported Balyan's horse from the director of the American Red Cross in Boston, Thomas Edmond Horse. In this letter we understand that the Armenian refugees reached Diana recently in 1915. Unlike other destinations of Armenian refugees to different corners of the world, such as Syria, Russia, the United States of America, Canada, etc., the Armenian diaspora was never formed in Japan. This is mainly due to the fact that Japan, with its various cultural and legal mansions, served only as a temporary home. Other places in the world he changing real. This is probably the reason why Japan has never been considered as a suitable research location for the study of Armenian refugees, and yet it exists and is currently a research topic there for history if you are a topic of Armenian refugees in Japan. Let's see first. In Japan, I'm sorry, now, this map, let me explain. This map is a map created in 1916, it shows all the roads that pass the new Russians and Armenian refugees. You will see 4 of these lines. And red, they are the path of 4 refugees from western Armenia to this. Of the development of this section from Armenia to Tbilisi, behind Tbilisi, from this section, they have already boarded France, the railway had arrived until they reached in a broad sense, many. A few also came from Harvey and from there to Laos and there is 0 and went from Turkey by rail who is or coming. You will see the main cities through which he. First, let's see what laws were in force in Japan at that time related to immigration. For example, in 1998, a decree was issued according to which for example, Article 1, the entry of persons without a passport of the first region or a document confirming nationality is prohibited. I would like to draw your attention to this in part 2. The first part and the sixth part, according to the sixth part D, a person with a mental weakness, the poor and those in need of assistance, prohibited the entry into the country. Did the Armenian immigrants have passports? What passports did they use to enter the country, and were those passports recognized as Japanese? Now look at the delays in these two parts. If we look at them, they didn't help the conquerors to enter the land at all. They were all poor, they all needed help, and this law was very bad for them. It was negative. Now, in fact, thousands of refugees have found their way to Japan with passports issued by state bodies of different countries, including passports issued by Armenian committees established to support refugees after the Republic of Armenia in 1999 and before statehood. Note that since the 19th century, as a result of European pressure on the Ottoman Empire, Christians and non-Muslims, the rights of the bottoms were slowly reformed and they are getting European protection. In the case of respectable water, European protection happened to the Armenian genocide, but anyway, that is a different topic. According to the First World, it also included passports. Of passports. When that is the reason why most of the hundreds of Armenian refugees who went to Japan had British, French and Russian passports. I want to present you some examples of those passports. Here you see the passports of the Republic of Armenia that were issued to mines. Of course, these are not the other passports that the audience had at the forum when they arrived in Japan. To acquire the science of our Armenian genocide. By the way, this is my Armenian passport. After 1925 to 1925, if I'm not mistaken, they received the refugees from the Republic of Armenia. Despite the fact that the Armenian community no longer existed, they received those Armenian women. Yes, the other passport is 1919, Japan, 1002 years old, Saranash, Nigerian. You will see in this picture a French passport of the region with love. Here you can see the Japanese entry visa to Vladivostok, who you will see here in this section by the Japanese Consul General of the Vladivostok Bureau, and it is clear from this round seal, it is clear to all of us that he entered Japan on January 31, 1999. Why does my mother pay attention to passports? Passports are very important to me for my research because they are an alternative way to understand how long Armenian refugees stayed in Japan, because I have. I have the lists of the passengers from the ship that left Japan, but I don't have any information about entering, and it is very important for me to find the passports. A next example, and now look, if we look at their passenger list, then we will see that they left Japan on the 12th of February. There are only 13 Georgian left, and here you will see that Nigerian here, and here you will see that there are two classifications here in this section, their nationality and ethnicity. Their ethnicity is written in Armenian and their nationality is written here in France. I guess they checked everyone's passports before boarding, and according to those passports, they filled out their forms. Many elements, many names are busy, big trees made mistakes. Next we'll tell why I think Japanese people wrote. The next passport is 1119 of Japan Nigerians. 107 is the passport of Sironian, who is barely a limb. French hotel in Vladivostok. Lisa was told again by Cooch from Baku, and the round seal is clear that they have entered the country, and they have again entered the province of Sor and Gai. And from the list of passengers it becomes clear that they are only staying in Japan for 7 days, but look here, it is interesting that their nationality, despite their Armenian nationality, is written in the passport as Armenian. Of course, I can't say why this is so, there are many errors in this program, everything in this list it is not possible to take exams for this. I would like to introduce a little bit of Alan H. Al and Limbs. The story before lunch. According to 1980 years ago, there was no end to the interview conducted by American-Armenian journalist Jackie Aramayan, who at that time was already known as an artist. We told him the location of the ammunition stored by the Armenians for the purpose of defense in the year 1910. At that time, he was only 9 months old. His mother is also with her 4 children, all of them under the age of 10 were forcibly displaced to the Syrian desert, but they managed to escape. They came from Tiflis and reached Yerevan in eastern Armenia, where he was pushing for an initiative that fought for the country's independence. At the end of the 18th century, 3 brothers and sisters were lost on the way, and Alan could never think what happened to him. The only reason Perch was able to survive was that he was tied to his back, but he tried 3 times in desperation from the end. The first time the last data sounds to the family, but still they cried so much that in the end the age of the gypsies was his, and the second time the son last gave an acquaintance to get rid of him with a gun, but the acquaintance refused the third time, tried to celebrate the last river's edge to find an order to the current of the river remembers her, but still the current cannot be imagined, to what degree the physical, psychological, and key status of Aran was racked, and that of her husband and her 3 children. After going through death, he tried to free himself in order to save his own child. Of course, you can read many stories like this. After living in a refugee camp with thousands of Armenian refugees, he left Yerevan at 19 and reached Syria by rail in a good way, then Yokohama, from where they left by boat. To join Ali's 2 younger brothers who financed their way to M. The next type of passport that I would like to show you that I managed to get is the Persian passport. In the photo, you will see the circle in the frame. 2 of them arrived in Japan in 1917. You will see this passport of their father. Here is Gaspar's passport. Living from his sea. He actually had no idea that this passport was Persian. He sent this passport to me as a Kostani passport because he always knew that his ancestors lived there. He assumed that his passport should be Ottoman, but Then I realized that it is not Ottoman but Persian, and here you can see another Persian passport where you will see the sign. The sign is the same, it is the sign of the lion. I can't say for sure that the other family members also entered Japan with these same Persian passports. I can't say for sure, but maybe it's possible. Now I'll tell you why if you'll also see them on the list of passengers. Controversial to note that here. I know this passport is not Lilith in this picture, the original is lost and only this part of this picture is left. Unfortunately the original has not been found here. The area is marked Salmast. I have already mentioned about the city which was very close to the Persian and Ottoman part. Shiamasis is now a city. There is a part of it here, because in his opinion of the old girl in Japanese, maybe the Japanese people love it. I already bought it. I am a lion here. The Armenian nationality is of course written as Armenian. I don't know why it is written like that and the last long term. The residence is written in Persia, that is, I assume that the family and their paperwork, the papers, took them to the border of Persia in the city, and it turns out that those two mothers and daughters also had Persian passports. This is just an assumption, of course. Here you see another picture of two refugees. There is a mass in Japan. They are sacredly incomplete and outwardly Baptistian. W141399 also referred to these two. Mine, and this is interesting. They were found in the same group with that lovely culture pigeon and Avedisians. They were found in Japan, and it was interesting. Their grandchildren and great-grandchildren still exist today. I don't know, of course. They have known each other since then, or they knew each other after Japan, but I don't know. The interesting thing is that until today they are very close according to his rules, and the picture of this picture is very interesting. I think you will notice that the picture is placed and you can see that there is another person standing next to the outsider who is wearing a kimono. I think that picture was a group picture. Our kimono and decided to take a group picture. I don't know, but if that picture is found, it's worth it. When were the passports recognized by Japan? So it became clear that Japan began to be quite strict with foreigners entering the country. Of course, immigrants were not ordinary tourists with money and proper documents, but they were 100. Was also to these needy refugees. As for the immigrants, the guests all needed help. More Armenian immigrants were arriving from a country that at that time Japan considered an enemy, and judging by the above blessing, there was no factor, as I mentioned, that would contribute to the immigrants' travel. Unhindered entry, and here you will see what the recognition of passports was due to. Of course, diplomatic relations at that time often did not have in the background. At that time, passing from 1915 to the end of the 1980s, Japan has no diplomatic relations with Turkey, Persia, and Armenia. We already know that only 20 whether they actually accepted Japan, but it is necessary to remember that there was no diplomatic relationship at that time. And therefore those passports are not either. According to Diana, in the message of the Minister of Internal Affairs of Japan, Norm 0, in April 1988, a group of Armenian refugees arrived without Japanese visas. Not only were they not allowed to go peacefully, but they were also called Turks and enemies, according to the correspondence of the daughter of the Japanese Consul General in Cyprus. It becomes clear that none of the refugees have ever been to Boston to get a consular visa. Dima Diana began to communicate with the Ministry of Internal Affairs through letters to help, patiently explaining the Victoria's situation, confident that they do not intend to send her to Japan. She also asked the government to accept refugees not as Armenians born in the Ottoman Empire, but as Armenians born in Armenia. Of course, after the request, the Japanese government decided to formalize the 100 mines. As poor people who do not fall under the other restrictions of the statute, this definition is to put forward and grant a special entry permit. Certain conditions they had to endure. The refugees submitted applications to the ministry stating the nationality, surname, place of birth, the destination, and the Armenian Committee of America of which he was a member. C had to cover all their expenses, accommodation, transportation, all the refugees' worries, according to Vladivostok, who was the American Red Cross in Diana's correspondence. Diana had permission to take care of refugees and was recognized as their guardian. The person has had problems. With regard to the design, they could have entered the country under this condition, perhaps under this condition. Conflict she and administer. It is clear from the national combination that Japan, which was attacking England at that time, did not want to recognize the passports issued by the Armenian Committee. Business. 3 days after this, Diana informs about Japan's illness in Japan, about the rejection of the passports of the Armenian Committee, and then sends 3 letters to the foreign minister, reminding the foreign minister that Japan is one of the countries that recognize the Republic of Armenia and that the Armenian committees are authorized by the Republic to issue Armenian passports. Are those passports accepted and visas or? After some interest in the recognition of the passports of the Armenian Committee by other countries, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs did not take up this matter in July 1920. Main? Instead of issuing travel certificates to Armenians with passports of the Armenian committees, this would have allowed Armenians to enter Japan. Whether the correspondence of this site regarding Armenian passports continued later, I cannot say, but I think that maybe some refugees with Armenian passports were allowed by the Guardian to enter the country. Now I would like to present the stories of 3 of the refugees in Japan. The first story is about an Armenian man from America who was trying to return to Armenia and find his family, but he is facing seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Has taken your information to let me quote from the book. Ordained as a research paper, that is, he was denied boarding a ship belonging to an enemy country that changed the peace. A 40-year-old Turkish man named Pogo Sabatov was with 8 Armenians returning from America at 7 o'clock in the evening of the 7th of the month. Considered the people of the territory of the hostile country and the volunteer fleet of Ruzan and did not allow them to project. According to him, that is, Saturday means Saturday. I'm not a pure Turk, that's a real Armenian. Last year I became the goal of Turkey. Currently, my wife and children have nothing to do with Alexandropol, Russia's state of Alejandro, the ordinary peasants in the city. Since this great war began I have had 5 serious brothers and sisters, which are still in Armenia? That is, in Western Armenia. I also stand out for my wife and children in Russia. On the 9th of November I left by boat to San Francisco from December Francisco, and on the 4th of December yes side the above is friendly. Then they brought me a railway station and 7 people. I tried to return home. Everyone else had tickets, but I didn't, so I couldn't. According to the news, Turkey recently sent tens of thousands of Armenians and my brothers and sisters were also killed. The newspaper continues, he was upset with the cruelty of the Turks. What will happen to him after this, he said, and they started a pessimistic day. Henrik. Reliable and communicative appoint the consul of Russia Hua Sudu should be Peter heard about the situation, sympathized with him and sent a telegram to Monica, Moscow, and that's where Vladi's gold is, and asked them to allow the sea to enter the Russian military base. He also received sympathy in the police department and defense. Of course, I don't have any other information about the week from this paper, but from the list of passengers, it can be assumed that here you see the week in Pogos, and the date also coincides with February 21, 1916, that is, 1 month later, he left and was alive. Left for San Francisco and I don't know if the family joined him or what happened, I couldn't tell about it. The circle that I would like to present is about Ripsimi, it is Ripsimi. The family of sciences according to the book called Anushavan, which was edited by Anushavan, This book was edited by Anushovan's son, that book was edited by Anushovan's son. They have 40 days left in Japan. According to the passenger list, they will see him here. On October 7th, according to that book, one day Rupsemi went to Yokohama for a public thing. She was sitting on the edge of the bathroom and a male attendant came in. Their name is San. You check the woman is San and not the call comes in and rubs her back purpose. When she hears and sees a man approaching, imagine all naked women. Not scared, the evil screamed at the same time trying to cover up. And this was a real cultural shock. We are told that for a poor Armenian woman with Armenian teeth, for a woman from Western Armenia, a man will see the women's section of a public bath. And this picture is available on the internet. I took it from Wikipedia. It was painted by George Ferdinand Pippo, who lived in Japan for 17 years at the end of 1800 years. By the way, at that time, there were different diseases, especially eye diseases, such as Rapho. If someone is suffering, they cannot sit because the disease is contagious. I got certificates from family members where we can see where he was examined and who was his doctor from this medical examination document. It is clear that the SIM of the country was checked to find out if the anti-loss tons, the Anglo-tons, they are worms, roundworms were in the intestines, and the disease was widespread. Rafa had or not here in their villages during this time. You will see they are the ship tickets from Coma to San Francisco. In this middle part I say it is a document given to the Russian side by the Russian disease documenting that they are leaving. Everyone had found a letter written on October 12, 1920, written as a diplomatic result of Japan, on the side of the port of the computer prefecture. The letter was addressed to the ministers of foreign and internal affairs of the country. 7 prefectures where Japanese and Korean police officers are located. It mentions a young Armenian boy named Vahe Hamburdzimyan. Let me briefly introduce the contents of this letter. The person is indicated on the right side. The mentioned person studied letters at the American Boston School of Commerce. But in the meantime he returned to his homeland, and this time for the purpose of re-entering the same school. On October 12th at 7 o'clock in the morning, this person came from Husum in Korea. He is from Chambi, it is from Bridge Prefecture. Deposit city then yoga from where to leave united. As a result of the research, it became clear that the letter he has says that the amount he has is 180, which does not correspond to the amount set by the canonical immigration test. But the procedure to enter the country is completed, and this evening at 7:50 p.m. Shimon will leave say Yoko for Yoko. Before coming to Armenia, I managed to get in touch with Vahe's daughter, Lida Van, who provided her with a very important material about his days spent entering Japan, his meeting with Diana Agra in Japan, and the medical examinations of the Armenians who were there at that time, and other incidents. According to Vahe was equal. When Vahe's father started the genocide, you will see here Hohan's Vahe here only 5 years and 4 years old. Wow, Father Havans decided to kill his younger brother. We will take my younger brother and sister to Harbin refugee camp, because I am sure that both of them were powerful conscripts of the Ottoman Empire. And that would be the end of them if they left the city in vain. I don't know exactly when it will be 13 years old and 10 years old. After bringing the boys to Harbin, John returns to the games, the factor is transferred to the family, thinking that the brutality of the international city and the Turks cannot go unpunished for the family. According to the Lira, there are only 3 years left in Harbin. Waihan is an interesting young man. He knew Russian. Here in this map you will see this part of Vahe. I can't say in detail, but he came to Syria. Water arrived by railway man Julia. Here there was such a town Manucherian, they also called this part, but there is and there was also man water in English Manucherian. City in this part. Then I came from Harbin 100 and they are gone now, they say Shenyang then Gusan Korea, Chinese city Shenyang then Gusan now in South Korea, and from here Simon left by boat from the shoulders and come to this part if they will remember in the upper part, but the country Simon Osergiat has already gone by railway and this is the only one. This is the material from which you were able to find out this one and the direction, because I thought until today that everyone came to Arpan, even went to the washing machine, then there is water, but here for the first time I learned that they also went, they came in China, where is it in Korea, and they entered Shimon. This is news to me. Keep free, he is an interesting young man, he knows Russian, Turkish, he was learning English. He liked to read and play music, the piano, like the violin, he was very fond of Japanese. And writes with respect. Even in New Harbin, one other Armenian migrant boy had an argument with the local Japanese people and filled with horror stories that he found disrespectful to the Armenian boy in his ship going fast to Japan. He was sincere with the violinist, with whom he played for a long time on the road. Let me introduce a little deal with him. For example, the fire brigade in Harbin received news that he can prepare for his trip to America, the Embassy of America, Japan, and China. After finishing his religious affairs, he left by train. Again. After going to Moses, checking the money with Wahe, they wanted to send them back. Although they treated him well, but to fill him back, he just didn't have enough money, but he said that it will be decided by Simon Snake official, he was warned by, that with that amount it can only reach the graves. There, if they allow it, it is possible to continue. However, when they arrived at Shimon Loiki's place, they examined him again and, seeing a motive, took him to the police with insufficient money. How did he keep going, writing, I treated people with unbearable politeness, that is, even the police were so polite that it was even unbearable, but it continues as a result of great efforts. Remember this great effort, he says, as a result of great effort I was allowed to go to Joyce and my joy is boundless because if I had been sent back I would have spent my last money at night. 10:159 They allowed me to leave the police on the condition that I would leave first by boat. And the person who seems to have found Dodrikian told me at the end, go study and help Armenia with education at that stage. The Malik was not aware of Wahe's change in America before those events. After studying the cases and reading the diary from the diary, I realized that Wahe's great effort was that he seemed to have invented the story of his being a student in Boston to get rid of that desperate situation and him. Let him go. At the station, he got acquainted with independent and Russian-speaking Japanese students of the classes, with whom he talked all the way through his school years. After storing my things, I decided to go and see in the city at the same time looking for a lady available from this post. We can say that the Vahe is already aware and wonderful and Diana of the daughter's certification organized her departure from Harbin. Of course they also continue. I got on the tram and after a long time I finally found it. Even she is an old woman when she seems to be afraid to pass a ram. I gave the ID card and went to find Gergen. I don't know who to go with and the others I was supposed to go with, and I was from that new group. The next day, when he told him that he presented Vahe's card to buy a ticket, Vahe thought about what kind of desire this woman would have, who is so outgoing and so much help coming. Vine has a week left of yoga. During that time he has walked a lot in the city. He has met what he says are almost 10,000 students, groups of 10,000 students passing him for hours, religious group, drummer, right, girl, boy group. He has written postcards with city views as souvenirs at parties and attended at the home of the other immigrants and underwent an eye examination before departure and left by ship on October 21st. That's why I wanted to present the role of Diana Ubgur, and of course I knew that we can clearly say that if Diana Ubgur was not there, the Armenian refugees would not have been able to enter Japan. To understand and what path they went through, what trials they went through, what impression did they have about Japan when other than that, thank you very much for your attention.